LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the April 22nd edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the weekend's dozen best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. The political comedy source for the opening clip I've chosen for you is from Bill Maher's monologue last Friday on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, but then the rest of my dozen clips come from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the topic I'm covering in the title and listed briefly down below, and then also you can also see a link to my clip list of the dozen clips with my cryptic notes that you can try to follow along. The topic is Trump versus Comey, but there's also some breaking news about, or we're not breaking today, but breaking during the week, breaking news about Michael Cohen, the president's attorney, and even his mystery third client turning out to be Sean Hannity. That was covered briefly on the Sunday morning news analysis shows, and there was a brief coverage of some of the stuff with North Korea, and but the topic I'm going to be covering is mostly the Russia scandal, Trump, Comey, Cohen, Mueller, that kind of stuff, and those are the jokes that I'm going to start with from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. This is from his monologue last Friday, talking about Comey and Rudy Giuliani and Michael Cohen. And this is about a minute and 40 seconds. I think these were probably some of the best jokes of the monologue. Not the greatest monologue, but I'll talk about it with you after we watch it together over here.
So let's see what's going on season 2 of The Apprentice. White House edition. The big villain of the week this week for Donald Trump is Jim Comey, former FBI Director Comey, because he's out there selling a book. Boy, he's on more TV shows than Michael Avenatti. Oh, Michael's here. Oh, it's on every show. But no, but I said Jim Comey was on Dr. Oz this morning, showing Dr. Oz where Trump touched him with dolls. I mean, it's just. And Trump has a new lawyer. You heard this? Rudy Giuliani from the law firm of Jacoby and Dracula. Hey, Rudy got famous by attaching himself to a pile of rubble. It could work again, you know. All right. No, first Trump goes to Washington. Now, Giuliani, congratulations, New York. You're slowly getting rid of your rat problem. But the guy who was really sweating it out these days is Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, Trump's criminal lawyer. And when I say criminal lawyer, I mean a lawyer who's a criminal. He always looks like his meetings take place on a park bench. And every consultation ends with the words, "This never happened."
Now that joke wasn't a bad joke, the criminal lawyer joke, but actually, as a former criminal defense attorney, or criminal lawyer, as some people like to say, I mercifully cut out the next joke, which was like a prison rape joke, which, as a former criminal defense attorney, I don't find those jokes all that funny. There were a couple jokes in there that were funny. The Rudy Giuliani getting famous based on rubble, that's kind of a funny joke. There are a couple other good ones in there, but overall, that I don't think the monologue, and you can watch the entire monologue, it'll link down in the video description as usual, but I don't think Bill Maher's monologue what ended up being as entertaining as the epic battle that I'm going to show you from the other name I put in the title. I put Bill Maher in the title, and I put Kellyanne Conway in the title, the White House communications senior advisor to the president, senior counselor to the president, I think is that her title, or senior communication, I don't know. I can never remember her title, but she is really like the spinmeister-in-chief, going all the way back. I remember when she used to be Kellyanne Fitzpatrick, appearing on Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher many years ago. And actually, the third question that I'm going to show you, and these are not the next clips, but I'm just priming you for the epic battle between Dana Bash on CNN State of the Union and Kellyanne Conway, including about the guy that changed her name from Kellyanne Fitzpatrick to Kellyanne Conway, her husband. That became an issue that really set her off. But before I get to those 3 Kellyanne Conway clips, I want to show you 4 news summaries from 4 of the big 5 corporate outlets of basically the Russia scandal and the summary of the week. And I'm going to start with NBC's Meet the Press, where Chuck Todd, they tried to do sort of a little comedy intro with making up these like funny, and I put funny in quotes, tabloid titles for the tabloid coverage of how it's become a tabloid presidency. And then there's a news summary, which is more serious. It's actually probably the best of the news summaries. I just didn't really care for this introductory part where they do the tabloid coverage. You can let me know what you think after we watch that 3-minute, 47-second clip together over here.
Morning. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that it feels as if sometimes we're living in a tabloid presidency, given the president was raised in a New York tabloid culture. So we imagine our own tabloid headlines to tell the story of this week. Former FBI Chief James Comey's memos are released, and the president charges that Comey broke the law. Comey claims the president told him Vladimir Putin said, quote, "We have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world." Rudy Giuliani's back, this time joining the president's legal team. A porn actress causes a spectacle at a court hearing involving the president's lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen. It's revealed in that open courtroom that one of Cohen's 3 clients is Fox News host Sean Hannity. There's open debate over whether Cohen will flip and testify against the president to avoid a possible jail sentence. And now the Democratic National Committee sues the Trump campaign, Russian WikiLeaks, alleging they conspired to help Mr. Trump get elected. Well, it all seems at times like tabloid fun. It's deadly serious business. The country remains deeply divided, and its president appears increasingly in peril.
There was no collusion with Russia.
President Trump is lashing out, tweeting, "James Comey illegally leaked classified documents to the press in order to generate a special counsel. Therefore, the special counsel was established based on an illegal act." It's a new line of attack on the Mueller probe from a president under siege, increasingly agitated as the squeeze is put on his longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, whose office, home, and hotel room were raided by the FBI last week.
Mr. President, could Michael Cohen slip?
Cohen told Vanity Fair in September, "I'm the guy who would take a bullet for the president."
I'll do anything to protect Mr. Trump.
But now Mr. Trump's legal advisors are warning the president that Cohen may cooperate with federal prosecutors if faced with criminal charges.
He still has to be concerned about 2 possibilities. Number one, Cohen flipping on him and not only singing but composing and making up stories. And second, files that are seized.
Adding to Mr. Trump's concerns, the Justice Department, pressed by House Republicans, released 15 pages of memos from the former FBI director, an intimate look at the relationship between Mr. Trump and Comey in the months leading up to his firing. The memos document the president's efforts to get the FBI to drop the criminal case against fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
It's certainly some evidence of obstruction of justice.
And they detail the president's obsession with disproving the Steele dossier, particularly an unsubstantiated claim that the Russians had tapes of Mr. Trump with prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room in 2013.
My sense is that he was focused most on the personal piece because he would bring it up with me repeatedly.
According to the memos, it was Mr. Trump who brought up the incident in meetings on January 6th, January 27th, and February 8th, telling Comey the hookers thing is nonsense, but that Putin had told him, "We have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world." Many of Mr. Trump's allies claim that the Comey memos vindicate him.
This is a big, big beginning to the end of what has been a witch hunt from pretty much day one.
Cheers.
But after a week-long media blitz that at times veered into the petty and sensational.
You reference Trump's possible self-tanning, the size of his hands.
The detailed memos ended up adding credibility to Mr. Comey's account, as one Republican critic worries about the president's stepped-up campaign on law enforcement.
Tearing down the Justice Department or the FBI is not a good thing for our nation.
Joining me now is the president's chief congressional negotiator.
So, and that goes to interview with Marc Short. Is that I believe that's the person who I have from NBC a little bit later. The White House chief the White House Legislative Director Marc Short, and I'll show how he responds to all of this and talks about whether this Mueller investigation has gone too far in scope. And there was a pundit who responded to that in a panel discussion later. I can't remember who it was, talking about how these special counsel investigations do tend to wander in terms of their subject matter. For those of us who remember the Clinton investigation, it's like the opposite of this whole Stormy Daniels case leading to Michael Cohen, because in the Clinton investigation, they started off with this like shady real estate deal and ended up with like a sexual scandal. Then with the Stormy Daniels case, they're like starting off with a sexual scandal, and through Michael Cohen, it looks like it may lead to some shady real estate deals. So, wow, it's like the whole world is turned upside down from Clinton to Trump, or I don't know. That's something that's not what the pundit said. The pundit was just talking about how the Clinton investigation had gone so far, but it made me think that it's actually kind of the exact opposite. But you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I wanted to also show the second best news summary. This is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. This is actually the only clip I took from this week because the couple newsmaker guests I didn't think were, I didn't really want to focus on the DNC chair talking about the Democratic lawsuit against the Trump campaign, although you'll see that in this next news summary. I don't think they mentioned Sean Hannity in this next news summary, which is something I'm going to criticize Fox News for later. But they do. And then Bob Corker was on a couple shows, and I didn't want to take clips of him. But this is the news summary that's about half the length of the NBC Meet the Press news summary. I think ABC did a fairly good job, which I will discuss with you after we watch together over here.
Well, this Sunday morning, it was another consequential week for President Trump, with progress towards an unprecedented nuclear summit with North Korea. That is more likely now after new moves from Kim Jong-un. We'll have a lot more on that later. But here at home, there are new legal complications for the president and his allies on several fronts. On Friday, the Democratic National Committee filed a surprise lawsuit arguing that the Trump campaign was engaged in a conspiracy of, quote, unimaginable treachery with the Russians and WikiLeaks to defeat Hillary Clinton. Attorney General Jeff Sessions waiting to protect the man overseeing the Russia investigation by warning the White House he might resign if the president tried to remove Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. The president brought in Rudy Giuliani to try and negotiate a swift conclusion to the special counsel's investigation. All this as a potential bombshell in the case rattled the White House. Speculation that Trump's longtime loyal counsel, Michael Cohen, might turn on Trump and cooperate with prosecutors after a dramatic FBI raid on his homes and office. This Saturday headline in the New York Times, Michael Cohen has said he would take a bullet for Trump, maybe not anymore, sparked a ferocious response on Twitter from the president. After attacking the New York Times for making up the story, the president praised Cohen as a fine person who would never flip. Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media. That is the biggest question now looming over this investigation. Will Michael Cohen flip? Want to dig into it with our panel of legal experts. Alan Dershowitz, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, author of Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. Our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. And Mimi Rokoff, former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, now criminal justice fellow at Pace Law School. Welcome to all of you.
And I let that keep playing because that's actually a really interesting panel discussion. I didn't take any clips from it because it's the pundit panel, and I like to take the newsmakers or sometimes the news summaries to compare. Alan Dershowitz used to be kind of a hero of mine, although I think he's moved kind of too far to the right and on some issues, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and Donald Trump and the impeachment. But what I really liked about that panel discussion there was the way Alan Dershowitz kept sticking it to the former federal prosecutor, the person who used to be an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, when she kept saying, oh, prosecutors wouldn't do that. They wouldn't threaten someone's family. And he's like, well, they threatened someone's family in this case, in this case. And so if you want to watch that whole panel discussion between the lawyers, where one of the things that's really interesting about it is, or that worth watching, is that they all disagree. You get like multiple opinions on each of the different topics that aren't like all in unison, kind of like what you would see on Fox News Sunday or Fox News. But Anyway, you can watch all of ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos at a link down in the video description. And that's why I kept that news summary playing. This is the CNN State of the Union news summary, even shorter. Bash guest hosting for Jake Tapper. I don't think they mentioned Sean Hannity in this one like they didn't in that last one. They do mention Michael Cohen like they did in that last one. You'll see in the brief news summary from Fox News Sunday I'll show they don't mention Sean Hannity or Michael Cohen, I don't think. But I will also keep this playing a little bit long because you'll see that Bash is doing this news summary in front of our friend Kellyanne Conway, which is one of the reasons I showed the news summaries, is because I think they affect the newsmaker interviews when the reporter or the host gives this whole summary of the news from the week right in front of the person they're about to interview, and often they will discuss it in the actual interview. But anyway, here's Bash doing the first minute from CNN's State of the Union this morning, where the State of our Union is testing loyalty over in this clip.
Hello, I'm Bash in for Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is testing loyalties. President Trump is in Mar-a-Lago, where he spent the weekend sending rapid-fire tweets defending his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, against the notion that he might flip now that Cohen is under criminal investigation. The president called Cohen a fine person with a wonderful family, tweeting Saturday, "Most people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble, even if it means lying or making up stories. Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and dishonest media." The president also called an unknown person a drunk, drugged-up loser and continued his Twitter tirade against the former FBI director James Comey, suggesting the newly released Comey memos prove the special counsel's investigation is illegal and saying Comey is a proven liar and leaker. Here with me is counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne,
big smile, and you'll see at the very end in the third clip of Kellyanne Conway, and that's the clip after next, will be the first of the 3 Kellyanne Conway clips. You'll see that she ends with that same big smile after having the most vicious back and forth with Bash, saying, "Yeah, I'm coming after you and your spouses, CNN." That's basically what the third clip will be, because they asked a question about a tweet from her spouse. But before I get to that, I want to show the brief Fox News summary of the Russia scandal, and this was like 40 minutes into the show. It's not from the beginning. They actually sort of didn't even cover the United States for the first half of the show, because they had this exclusive interview with French President Emmanuel Macron, and because he's coming for the first state visit, state dinner that the Trump administration is having. And so Chris Wallace went over to Paris and interviewed Emmanuel Macron in his version of the Oval Office, and it's a really long interview, and I'm going to show one clip from it in a little bit. But after they did all that, they had a panel discussion where Chris Wallace gave this 1-minute, very brief summary of the Russia scandal from the week that doesn't mention Sean Hannity. I don't believe it even mentions Michael Cohen. It mentions Rudy Giuliani and James Comey. Well, let's watch it together, and I'll talk about it with you after we watch it together over here.
While we were in Paris, there were a number of developments in what we call, for better, lack of a better word, the Russia investigation. Let's take a look at what happened just this week. The Comey memos were released. Former Mayor Giuliani joined the president's legal team. Mr. Trump tweeted, "James Comey illegally leaked classified documents to the press in order to generate a special counsel. Therefore, the special counsel was established based on an illegal act." Really, does everybody know what that means? And Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein reportedly told the president he is not a target of the investigation. But Congressman Trey Gowdy says that doesn't mean much.
I don't think the president is the target, as you and I use that term, in a non-legal sense. But in a legal sense, that can change with one witness, with one document.
So, Juan, you heard that long list of developments just this week. Which of those developments really matters?
Well, I think... And, you know, one of my disappointments about the coverage on Fox News Sunday is they discussed this really briefly. Someone did eventually mention Michael Cohen in, I think it was Juan Williams there. But you noticed Michael Cohen didn't show up in the news summary. Sean Hannity being revealed as the secret client of Michael Cohen, that of course didn't show up on Fox News Sunday. And I was hoping to show some of the alternate world of the attacks on James Comey that I've been, if you watch Fox News as much as I do, and I don't watch as much as I used to, but I still watch it, as much as MSNBC and CNN. I like to mix up my news sources, and they have just been laying into Comey like he's a liar, he's a leaker, and you even, I guess you sort of saw it in that news summary from Fox News Sunday where pretty much the second half of the news summary was devoted to Donald Trump's attack on Comey, and then, of course, Rod Rosenstein saying he's not a target, but of course they qualified that by saying it might change at any time. But it almost sounded like the implication was if he does become a target, that's when he really has to get rid of Rod Rosenstein, or, well, that's some of the talk around some of the punditry and the clips I'm not going to show, but I thought that was really biased compared to the other news summaries I showed you, but not even it doesn't really give you a good indicator of how bad things have been on Fox News. While Comey's been doing all these interviews, they've been trashing him and playing off the president's tweets and basically calling him a leaker, a liar, a criminal, and which is what Donald Trump's been doing. So anyway, those were the 4 news summaries. On CBS's Face the Nation, they didn't really do a news summary. Looks like Sandy's getting a little agitated there. I have a bonus Sandy clip at the end, which actually the bonus Sandy clip is going to be her lying down right next to A Higher Loyalty, this James Comey book, which I also have purchased, but I haven't read. So I have watched several of his interviews, and that's one of the things. The next clip I'm going to show is the next 3 clips I'm going to show are Kellyanne Conway clips. And the second one is about Comey being a liar and a leaker, so I'll get to that. But the first clip is Dana Bash first asking the question that because, I showed that news summary from CNN's State of the Union, and it ended on, or one of the things it covered was whether Michael Cohen was going to flip on the president. And so that's the question that Dana Bash asked Kellyanne Conway here is why is Trump worried that Michael Cohen's going to flip on him if he hasn't done anything wrong? That's the original question. And you'll see Dana Bash actually tries to follow up on it and say, what about my question? And Kellyanne Conway actually denies that was the original question, which is why I'm pointing that out before I show the clip. Listen to the original question, because Kellyanne Conway will, at some point in this clip, she will actually lie to you and say, that wasn't the original question. But if you listen, remember the original question, because there'll be a quiz later from Kellyanne Conway as to whether you remember what the original question was. And then by the end of this clip, it's like a whole different topic, which I will talk about with you after we watch this 4-minute, 52-second Kellyanne Conway experience, one of 3 of the Kellyanne Conway clips I'm about to show you. In chronological order, this is the beginning of the interview with Kellyanne Conway, starting with, of course, the big Kellyanne Conway smile over here.
Okay, so you just heard me mention that tweet, the president talking about Michael Cohen, saying people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble. He thinks Cohen won't do that. Why is the president, though, talking about the notion of Michael Cohen flipping if the president didn't do anything wrong?
You have to look at everything the president has said about Michael Cohen and the FBI raid. He's defending someone who he's worked with and known for a dozen-plus years, Dana, who he thinks is being treated unfairly. Look at what happened this week, a tale of 2 tales, if you will. You've got Jim Comey on the one hand going out on a big book tour after saying, I don't leak, I'm not sneaky, I don't make any weasel moves, and doing all of the above again and again, including in his memos. More on that in a moment. And then you've got Michael Cohen, who the president believes is being treated unfairly at this moment. Also, the methods really have disturbed the president. He said in the cabinet room when he first got word of the FBI raid almost 2 weeks ago tomorrow that he felt the methods were a, quote, disgrace. And that should concern everyone. Nobody's talking about the contents of the documents. People are speculating and prevaricating, particularly not under oath on TV shows. But the method should concern people. I mean, look at the DNC server. The FBI didn't bother to secure or search the DNC's server when the DNC said no, and it had been hacked. And here, Michael Cohen is subject to a raid by the same organization.
Okay, let me get back to the original question, though, which is, at its core, what does the president have to hide that he is worried that Michael Cohen will flip over? Meaning,
no,
what does he have? What information does he have to give?
That wasn't your original question, Dana, respectfully, and that isn't what he's saying in these tweets. In these tweets, he's saying this is a fine family man who he worked with for many years. He thinks he's being treated unfairly.
Well, my initial question was, what does he have to hide if the president didn't do anything wrong? My question is, are you confident, just trying to get at the same answer, the same notion, and see if you can tell me if the president did unequivocally nothing wrong that he is worried that Michael Cohen will tell the feds about?
Dana, the president is, you're asking me, what do I know is in documents over a dozen or so years. I'm telling you that the president's concern has been for Michael Cohen and the way he's been treated. And he has said that again and again in tweets and again with the cameras rolling, with the media in the cabinet room and elsewhere. And why is that? Because I see people go on TV constantly who don't know President Trump at all and say he's loyal to no one but himself. That is completely not true. He stands up for people in his inner circle and people he knows when he thinks they're being treated unfairly. And he's done it again and again. He shows a great sense of loyalty to people whom he thinks is being treated unfairly. But remember, too, this investigation of almost a year was supposed to be about Russian collusion. Look at all the screaming graphics CNN has invested in. Look at all the airtime and the ink spill on this.
But this is separate.
And now we're up in, well, yes, now we're up into different
But you said there are people on TV who don't know the president. You are on TV and you know the president quite well. You work for the president and you're here on his behalf and behalf of the White House. Can you tell me that the president is, can you assure the American people that the reason the president isn't tweeting concern about Michael Cohen flipping because he is in potential legal jeopardy given whatever he knows that Michael Cohen has that the feds now have from that search?
Dana, the president is talking about Michael Cohen here. The SDNY has jurisdiction over this. The Southern District of New York has jurisdiction over this case now. And the president has made very clear that he thinks this is an overwrought process.
Let me go
by the way, also to answer your question very pointedly, this president was told 3 times by Jim Comey privately that he wasn't under investigation by the FBI. Comey decided against revealing that publicly and probably should have, in fairness, just the way he should have told President-elect Trump on January 6th in Trump Tower that his political opponents had funded some phony dossier against him. The Washington Post, of all places, reported less than 2 weeks ago that this president has been told he's not a target of the investigation. So I think we're answering your question in many different ways.
Yes,
you just want to now take it into a different jurisdiction.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I didn't take it in a different jurisdiction.
That's what a process is for.
The president's own Justice Department took it
right, but
in
all
another
this diverts attention away from everything
because they got information that they felt was important enough and that a judge felt was important enough to raid his personal attorney's office.
Dana, all of this, of course, diverts attention and focus away from all the great things this president is doing as president. And I hope CNN will start to cover that a little bit more because the American people certainly do like what's going on, including this president making huge strides in short order toward denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula.
And we are going to talk about that.
It's a huge issue.
In great detail later, but...
So that was clip 1. And like I said, if you remember what the original question was, it was exactly what Dana Bash said about a minute or 2 into that clip when Kellyanne Conway said, respectfully, that was not the original question. Yes, it was the original question. And I don't know, all that talk about Michael Cohen flipping, it just made me think of the late Gary Shandling and the Larry Sanders Show and the whole no flipping, but whatever, that's just me. That's just an old HBO subscriber remembering a great comedian who is no longer with us. But I did cut out this next part. I have almost the entire interview with Kellyanne Conway in these 3 clips, but I did cut out a couple minutes where they talked about who was the drunk, drugged out loser who Donald Trump was tweeting about attacking Michael Cohen. who's apparently from some of the other parts of the news shows I watch that I'm not clipping. No clipping, no flipping, no. It's most likely Sam Nunberg, if you remember who he is, that guy who went on all the news shows one day and said he wasn't going to cooperate with the Mueller probe and he was going to go to jail rather than turn over his emails, and then all of a sudden he turned over his emails. So it's probably that Sam Nunberg guy, although there's some small chance it might be Roger Stone. I don't know if Donald Trump is trying to pretend he has like a very negative relationship with Roger Stone, who is actually one of his like longtime henchmen. But I promised you that the second clip would be about James Comey being a leaker and a liar, and also McCabe, and this is a much shorter clip. It's under 2 minutes. Like I said, I cut out the part about who was the drunk loser attacking Michael Cohen, or drugged out loser. But this is about James Comey and, of course, his book, A Higher Loyalty, which, like I said, is on my bookshelf, but I haven't had a chance to read. And this is part of the White House campaign to attack his character and cut down his credibility, especially amongst the Trump true believers. And I will talk about this clip with you after we watch it together over here.
Because he's tweeting a lot this weekend, I have to ask you about it, because you're representing him. Answer. You mentioned Comey and that we would talk about him later. So the president repeatedly has called him a liar. Just hours after Comey's memos were released, the president tweeted this: James Comey's memos just out and show clearly that there was no collusion and no obstruction. Also, he leaked classified information. Wow, will the witch hunt continue? So here's my question. If Comey is a liar, how can the memos show that the president is vindicated? How can the president have it both ways?
Very easy. First of all, Comey said conflicting things on his own book tour this week. He can't even keep his story straight when he's out there among what he thinks is going to be a hero's welcome with the mainstream media. Unfortunately, many people, including your own Jake Tapper, pushed back on him, really filleted him last week. This is Jim Comey, who in those memos never says the President of the United States obstructed justice, told the President at least 3 times that he wasn't under investigation. And never in those memos, Dana, does then FBI Director Jim Comey say he's told anybody in the Justice Department that he's concerned about the President's credibility or conduct. He doesn't bother to do that. So he's already a proven leaker and liar. And by the way, ask nobody else, no other than Andrew McCabe, his former number 2, whose attorney this week was pushing back on Jim Comey. And they're arguing about Andrew McCabe now has criminal referral just this week because of lying about leaking to the press. Think about that. Lying about leaking to the press, the number 2 at the FBI, now in a battle with the number 1 at the FBI. They presided over an FBI that never bothered to get the DNC server, to search it, to secure it, never bothered to clean up their act at the highest levels. These people, Strzok and Orr and Page, who are against
Kellyanne,
Trump.
we're almost out of time. I just want to ask you one.
So, yeah, that was the smear against Comey, the smear against McCabe, the smear against anyone who is going to be a witness in the Trump obstruction of justice case. And if you want to know what obstruction of justice means, by the way, I've been including these links down in my video description for months and months and months. The statutes on obstruction of justice, there's one statute about how if a foreign national who doesn't have a green card, who isn't a permanent resident, if they contribute to a political campaign, that's also a federal criminal violation. But most of the links down there talk about what is obstruction of justice, and that's what James Comey's mostly talking about. And there's even a report from the Congressional Research Service that gives you not just the statutes, but like a history of how those statutes have been used and interpreted and all the different meanings they have, the different things that can qualify as obstruction of justice. And I don't know, I think we might be going that direction. I've talked about how I'm hoping I'm going to get to cover the impeachment probably next year when there's a Democratic House of Representatives to impeach Donald Trump. I've also said many times I find it very difficult to see 67 senators. You know, if you have a constitution, like I have my constitution here, this is my ACLU constitution, and if you read your constitution, you know that impeachment only requires a majority of the House of Representatives. That's 218 of the 435 members of the House of Representatives. But impeachment is like an indictment. It's just charging someone with obstruction of justice or collusion or whatever it's going to be, or defrauding the United States, or lying to the American people, or so many things that Donald Trump could be impeached for. But that's just a majority of the House of Representatives. Then it takes 2/3 of the members of the Senate. That's 67 senators. Even if the Democrats take back the Senate, they're only going to have like 51, 52, 53, 54. 54 would be like, that's what, isn't that what the Republicans have, like just a couple in their majority right now. So that would be huge. And I don't even think, I mean, it's not even probable that the Democrats are going to take back the Senate. They'll probably take back the House, but the Senate is much more of a reach. So 67 senators to remove the president, it's never happened. Not even Andrew Johnson after the Civil War. You know, Nixon, he didn't even get impeached. He resigned. And maybe Donald Trump will resign, but I don't know. That depends on your own psychological understanding of Donald Trump, which is, and he, whatever. I can't even predict anything about whether he would resign, or you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But I want to get back to the final Kellyanne Conway clip. And this was really unexpected. I thought the interview was like about to end. It was like, and you'll see Dana Bash partway through says, you know, I thought this was kind of like a lighthearted question, but this is like an epic, it turns into an epic battle, as I promised. It's like over 5.5 minutes long, and Dana Bash brings up Kellyanne Conway's husband and a deleted tweet he made that was critical of the Trump administration, and Kellyanne Conway goes to DEFCON 1. I think that is not an overstatement. You can let me know what you think after we watch the 5-minute, 37-second clip together over here.
We're almost out of time. I just want to ask you one question that a lot of people are asking me, probably you too, and that is, what is up with your husband's tweets? Your husband is a very well-respected lawyer, and he's been sending some tweets that have been critical of the administration. Just an example, in response to a tweet he saw saying President Trump's aides are reluctant to speak for him because he contradicts them later. Your husband wrote, "So true, it's absurd."
He writes a lot of things that are also supportive, and he writes a lot of things about corgis and Philadelphia Eagles and sports, too. But the fact is, well, two things I'll say to you. Number one, that, again, that woman who lost the election, whose name I never say on TV anymore, is wrong. That women, I think she said white women, have to listen to their the men in their life to form their own political opinions. Wrong again, lady. Number two, it's fascinating to me that CNN would go there, but it's very good for the whole world to have just witnessed that it's now that it's now fair game what people's how people's spouses and significant others may differ with them. I'm really surprised, but very, in some ways, relieved and gratified to see that. That should really be fun.
No, I actually, first of all, I would ask you that if you were a man and your wife were 1,000% I would. No. And it's not about that. It's about questioning, publicly questioning what you are doing for a living in with regard to your boss. And it has nothing to do with your gender.
And it has nothing to do with my spouse. And
right, that's why I'm just asking.
Oh, no. You just brought him into this. So this ought to be fun moving forward, Dana.
Okay.
We're now going to talk about other people's spouses and significant others just because they either work in the White House or at CNN. Are we going to do that? Because you just went there.
Yes.
CNN just went there. Look, differences of opinions.
By the way, this isn't critical. I'm just asking about.
Of course it was. It was meant to harass and embarrass. But let me just tell you something.
Absolutely not.
Let me just tell you something. By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when adultery is happening. More. By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when one is, I don't know, draining the joint bank account to support things that maybe the other disagrees with. So this is a fascinating cross the Rubicon moment, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that certainly was not intended to cross any Rubicon. It was actually intended to be somewhat lighthearted about the fact that we are all grown-ups who have different opinions. But I'm sorry that you took it that.
You said I've got to ask you a question that's on everybody's mind.
It is. It is. It is. I'm sure you hear it too. It is. And it is hard to have two adults in a situation like this, but it is unusual.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
It is unusual.
I'm sorry, it's hard for whom? I'm sorry, back it up.
It is hard.
It is hard. Who are the two adults? My husband
You and your husband. My point
now
is
you're talking about my marriage again?
I'm not talking about your marriage.
Yeah, you just said my
Kellyanne,
husband.
Kellyanne, here was my whole point in this.
It's hard for whom?
Is that you are a professional working for the President of the United States. And your husband is a very well-respected lawyer. And my point is that we don't often see, in fact, I don't remember the last time we saw somebody working for the president in a high-profile position when their spouse is saying critical things about them. That is all. That is all.
Well, that, A, is not true. There are other family members of people who work at the White House who certainly don't support the president privately and publicly. But I will tell you this, and there are people who have been in his administration who worked for Democrats or gave money to Democrats. But all that aside, that really is meant to divert attention from, again, the big issues that America cares about. But like I said, CNN chose to go there. I think that's going to be fascinating moving forward. And don't deny that when you just said it must be difficult. I do want you to clarify, though, for the whole worldwide audience, and in fact for me, since you raised me, it's, quote, difficult for whom to have two adults?
No, my point only is that
difficult for my children who are probably watching you right now, because it's not hard for them.
Well, I didn't say
they've already seen a double standard for their mother for 2 years.
It is not about gender. I don't want to have this conversation. You know that I don't believe that it's about gender.
No, it's not about gender. Hold on. It's not about gender. There's been a different standard for me than there have been for other people. And we bite our tongue plenty because I work for the people of this country, the United States government, the presidency, and the president of the United States. So there's plenty that I don't say. There's plenty that I don't talk.
Absolutely. I'll just give you because you went back here. Because you went there. You were always invited back here. Because you went there, I'll just give an example because you asked. Andrew McCabe. The president went after Andrew McCabe for something that his wife ran as a Democrat, and that had nothing to do with the president.
No. The president knew something early that everybody else is now finding out. The president has excellent instincts, and he knew.
But he didn't
Jim
say
Comey
that.
And Andrew
he talked
McCabe,
about his wife.
You don't know that he didn't say that. He knew that Andrew McCabe could not be trusted. And look what happened just this week. Andrew McCabe, it's admitted now that he lied 4 times, at least 3 under oath, Dana. Criminal referral just this week because he lied about leaking to the media. This is the number 2 at the FBI. This should have everybody concerned. Everybody should go back and look at what the FBI was doing and not doing while Comey and McCabe were in charge of it. And they all thought, if not wanted, the other person to win the election. And that so colored and politicized so much of their actions and their inactions.
Well, as you know, as you mentioned, the Inspector General is asking to look into Andrew McCabe, and we are covering that, and we will continue to cover that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Appreciate it.
And as I promised, the interview started with a big Kellyanne Conway smile, ended with a big Kellyanne Conway smile, but that was, like, I believe I promised you an epic battle, and it definitely was an epic battle. I've watched that clip now 3 times, as usual. I watch all these clips like 3 times. The first time when I watched the show, the second time when I capture the clip, and then the third time when I watch it with the live viewers here. And the first time I watched that, I was thinking for quite a while, Andrew McCabe, and because as Bash brings up in like the last minute of that 5.5-minute clip, Donald Trump has spent a lot of time attacking Andrew McCabe for having a wife who ran in Virginia as a Democrat. And so if anyone's going to say, oh, you can't attack someone for their spouse, Trump is the first one to be the pot calling the kettle black or whatever. But as I watched that for the 3rd time with all of you, it almost seemed like a boxing match where, like, Bash asked the question that, as I said before I showed the clip, she thought was like a lighthearted question. Like, we're going to bond over, oh, it's so hard to be political and have a spouse. And I don't know what it was that Kellyanne Conway's promising. Oh, CNN people, there's someone at CNN whose spouse or significant other is draining the joint bank account for some sort of cause that doesn't match what they say on the air. Or I don't know, that's in there. But I think Dana Bash thought she was asking this lighthearted question, and then she was really surprised, and almost like in a boxing match she was like dizzy for a second with that huge combination from Kellyanne Conway coming back from what was supposed to be a lighthearted question, but somewhere in like the last minute of the clip I just showed, she like regained her wits and finally asked about Andrew McCabe and his wife, and that was almost a recovery. But wow, that was quite an epic battle. I think we all have to agree on that. And all the rest, I mean, that's actually my favorite clip of the dozen clips I'm going to show on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup tonight. But I do have 1, 2, 3, 4 more clips before the bonus Sandy clip, and they're all worth watching. And the next one is actually Chuck Todd versus the White House Legislative Affairs Director Marc Short, and this is actually talking about a tweet that I wanted to discuss in greater detail. It was covered in several of the news summaries, not the one from Fox News Sunday, of course, but it's this tweet from Donald Trump saying that, James Comey, was a leaker and a liar, and his leaks were meant to get a special counsel. So the special counsel, which of course is misspelled CONCIL in the tweet that you'll see in this next clip, the special counsel was started because of an illegal act, and we all know what that means. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't ever explain what that is. And Marc Short, the White House Legislative Affairs Director, also doesn't really answer that question. But I think what he's trying to say is what's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. I've seen this argument made on Fox News a bunch of times in the last week. That's, the Fox News attack on James Comey that I've been talking about earlier. And it's totally inapplicable. That's, a Fourth Amendment issue. If there's an illegal search or an illegal arrest, evidence that is obtained because of that illegal search or illegal arrest is the fruit of the poisonous tree. That's the suppression doctrine. The Supreme Court went one way for a while, and then they changed their mind and said, oh yeah, that's actually a good idea. We should suppress evidence if it's obtained illegally through an illegal search or an illegal arrest. But this isn't an illegal search unless you think the Michael Cohen search was illegal, and it's not an illegal arrest. What they're talking about is James Comey giving these memos to this lawyer friend of his, who then described them to someone from the media, which I don't know whether that's leaking or not. It's sort of like indirect leaking. But whether it's a crime or not a crime, the appointment of the special counsel was something that Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein decided to do because Jeff Sessions, especially as a member of the Trump campaign, was conflicted and couldn't investigate things having to do with the possibility of the Trump campaign's collusion with Russia. So there's no real suppression doctrine application in this situation. So when Trump says, we all know what that means, it's, I don't know, is that because he doesn't know what it means, or he's trying to, get his 30% of people who think, oh yeah, he's so smart, I know, I'm a Trump supporter to the end, and that's his like 30 to 35% of the electorate, or, well, whatever. That's the basis of the question. You'll see Chuck Todd asking the White House Legislative Affairs Director Marc Short in this question, which is, as I think I just explained, totally bogus. And I'll talk about it with you a little more after we watch together over here.
Ask you a couple questions about a couple tweets referring to the Mueller probe. Here's one he did on Friday night. James Comey illegally leaked classified documents to the press in order to generate a special counsel? Question. Therefore, the special counsel was established based on an illegal act? Does everybody know what that means? Let me ask you, what does that mean?
Chuck, I remember there was a time when Republicans opposed special counsels in principle because they felt like they had uncharted terrain and that there was no check and balance on them. We've seen special counsels that have abused their roles from both Republicans and Democrats. Republicans fell in love with special counsel during the 1990s when a Whitewater investigation turned into an investigation about a 21-year intern having sexual relations with the president of the Oval Office. Special counsels have challenges and that they continue to go wide-ranging. This presidency, this administration has cooperated, provided thousands of documents. Taxpayers spent millions of dollars on this investigation, and to date, we continue to cooperate without evidence of collusion. So yes, I think the president expresses a lot of frustration for where the special counsel investigation is.
But does he believe its scope has been fair so far?
I think that we all have frustration that we believe that the scope has gone well beyond what was intended to be investigations into meddling in the election. And I think that the House and the Senate have had their own investigations. The House has completed those. We're anxious for the Senate to complete his.
Let me ask you about the release of the Comey memos. Why was it so important for the president to have them released?
I don't know to the extent that it was important for the president. I think this was pushed by House Republicans who were anxious to, I think the one that they were most anxious to get out and to show was Comey himself saying the president said to him, if there's evidence of Russian interference, I want you to get to the bottom of it. I think that that is counter to the narrative in the media that continues to say that the president's trying to obstruct justice or to obstruct the investigation. That memo shows the president specifically was advising Comey to get to the bottom of it.
In fact, I concur. It seems like the president was specifically saying investigate the dossier.
I think the
Would you go as far as agreeing that that's what those memos seem to indicate?
Perhaps. I mean, I can't put in what exactly Comey was thinking in his own words, but perhaps that's fair.
So I edited together two clips of the White House Legislative Affairs Director Marc Short there, but I don't think he ever really answered the question as to, you know, we all know what that means, right? When Donald Trump is trying to pretend that the special counsel Robert Mueller is somehow the fruit of the poisonous tree under some suppression doctrine that applies to illegal arrests or illegal search warrants, but doesn't apply to his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, recusing himself and appointing a special counsel. That's not based on an illegal act subject to the suppression doctrine. Actually, in this next clip, this is the only clip from CBS's Face the Nation. This is Margaret Brennan talking to Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, asking him also about this tweet, and then there'll be an additional tweet question. But Tom Cotton doesn't do any better job of explaining what we all, you know what that means about what it means when the special counsel was appointed based on an illegal act, James Comey leaking and lying, or, there's no actual criminal charge against James Comey. There's a criminal referral, which that'll be in this Fox News clip I show in just a minute. But anyway, before I get to that, I want to show this Tom Cotton response talking to Margaret Brennan on CBS's Face the Nation, which did not really emphasize what's been going on with the Russia collusion and the Trump obstruction of justice case. This is one of the only references to it on CBS's Face the Nation. Why, you can let me know what you think after we watch that 1 minute 15-second clip together of Senator Tom Cotton, who, I don't know, is he like doing Forrest Gump cosplay? He sounds a lot like Tom Hanks' Forrest Gump character. Even though he's from Arkansas, not Greenbow, Alabama, over in this clip.
Speak very frequently with the president. Do you agree with his argument that the special counsel led by Robert Mueller was based on an illegal act, as he tweeted on Friday?
I assume that we're talking here about Jim Comey's memos that were released and now may have contained classified information.
He said the special counsel specifically was created out of an illegal.
Well, Jim Comey testified to my committee, the Intelligence Committee, that he wrote those memos and then gave them to a friend of his in hopes that they would be leaked to the New York Times, and then that would lead to the appointment of Robert Mueller. I think that that's unfortunate behavior on Director Comey's part, now especially that we know that they may have contained classified information. The Inspector General is reviewing them. At this point, though, I think it's best for everyone involved, to include the President, for the special counsel to conclude his investigation by following the facts to their conclusion as quickly as he can, just like we're trying to do on the Intelligence Committee.
Would you advise him to continue tweeting about his personal attorney, Michael Cohen?
You know,
he says may flip.
The president gets lots of advice about what he should and should not tweet, to include members of his close family, and he continues to do so. So I don't think he's going to take advice about his Twitter comments from a senator, no matter how much they work together.
Senator Cotton, thank you. Good to have you in studio.
Thanks, Margaret.
We turn now to.
So, yeah, I don't think CBS's Face the Nation did a great job of covering all the Russia collusion and obstruction of justice stories from this week. It was briefly mentioned there, and then Margaret Brennan also interviewed Senator Dianne Feinstein from California, my Democratic senator, although I'm not a big Dianne Feinstein supporter, and asked her briefly about, you know, the firing of Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller and that whole issue. But there was no news summary, and I don't think it was quite the focus of the program that it should have been, although they did have this great interview of I think he's the foreign minister from Iran, and that was worth watching. So that's something you can see by looking at the Face the Nation clip down in the video description. But this next clip I'm going to show is, earlier I showed how Fox News Sunday covered the news of the Russia scandal, as Chris Wallace called it, or for lack of a better term, and never mentioned Michael Cohen and never mentioned Sean Hannity. And Fox News is not really a news organization, and the fact that they didn't even criticize or in any way punish Sean Hannity for being involved in this news story without ever revealing it to his viewers, it just shows that Fox News is more and more like Trump TV and whatever. I didn't really talk about that much, but I'm getting a look from Sandy over there. Why are you giving me that look, Sandy? Okay. But as I said, for the Sandy fans, there will be a bonus Sandy clip after the final two clips I'm about to show. The first of which is a Fox News Sunday clip where Chris Wallace is talking to the president of France, Emmanuel Macron. And first he asked this really weird question about Emmanuel Macron's handshake with Donald Trump and, what that was all about. And then he asked multiple follow-up questions about, asking Emmanuel Macron, of all people, about how he feels about what James Comey's been doing in the news lately. And it's so disingenuous because, of course, a foreign leader who is about to meet with the President of the United States is going to totally downplay any reservations or concerns about, Russia collusion or obstruction of justice. He's using someone who is going to, obviously for his own personal political reasons, not only kiss up to Donald Trump, but normalize Donald Trump as, an American president and part of the long history of U.S.-French positive relations, which, of course, the United States has a long history of good relations with France, going back to the Statue of Liberty, well, before the Statue of Liberty, Lafayette, and the American Revolution comes up in this answer from Emmanuel Macron, but it's so disingenuous from the Fox News side is the point I'm trying to make, which I will discuss with you after we watch that 4-minute, 8-second clip from Fox News Sunday this morning. Like I said, starting with the handshake and then going to the whole attempt to normalize Trump as part of the U.S.-Franco relationship for 200 plus years over here.
First meeting and the famous first handshake between the two of you at the NATO summit in May of last year. It lasted 6 agonizing seconds, and you said afterwards it was not an innocent moment, that it was a moment of truth. How important do you think it was to establish that you were not going to be pushed around?
Look, I think it was a very direct and, yes, a very direct and lucid moment. When I say it's not innocent, it's to say we were sitting together and we had this shake hand, and it was to say now we will work together.
But you also made it clear that you weren't going to let him...
Normally it's the specialists, basically, to take you with. So I was very, I mean, seeing Prime Minister Abe and some of the different victims, I resisted. But in fact, I mean, it was a very natural moment, I have to say, and a very friendly moment. Don't worry.
As you know, the special counsel is investigating President Trump. This week, the former FBI Director James Comey said that he was morally unfit to be president. Does this hurt President Trump's credibility and his effectiveness on the world stage?
I don't think so, and to me, there is no impact. I mean, people of the United States voted for President Trump and elected him. You have your system. You are a free country with a rule of law, which is, I mean, very great. I have the same in my country. This is an actual democracy with judges, with media, and with all the controversies. But here in this office, I'm not the one to judge and in a certain way to explain to your people what should be your president, or to consider that because of these controversies or because of these investigations, your president is less credible for me, for my people, and for the rest of the world. I mean, I'm here to deal with the President of the United States, and the people of the United States elected Donald Trump.
Do you ever wonder whether he will serve his full term?
I never wonder that. I mean, I work with him because I work with him because both of us are very much at the service of our countries on both sides. And for me, that's why, even when we have some disagreements on climate and on some issues, I think the most important thing is to, I mean, just to remind that we are at the service of our people. That's our legitimacy. And this service is to work for this very long-term history for freedom, for defense of our values. And that's, I mean, Lafayette came when you decided to be a free country. He came for France. He helped the United States to exist. During the First World War, during the Second World War, when we were attacked, when our liberty was attacked, thousands of young people came here and died here for my country. That's it. That's the story of our relationship. And President Trump and myself are, whatever happens, in the line of this history. That's why my gift to your president will be an oak taken in a very symbolic place, especially for your Marines in north of France, that together, I mean, we will put in his garden, because that's for me a great symbol of this long-term relationships.
You talk about...
So I think I pretty much explained what I thought was totally disingenuous and bogus about that last clip before I showed it. That first, that whole handshake question, I don't know what that was about or why that was more important than the second question about Trump's credibility when he's being investigated for collusion with Russia and obstruction of justice. But of course that was all Sandy is having some problem. Are you okay, Sandy? What is your problem, Sandy? Are you good? I think she's ready to eat dinner and she's upset that she hasn't been fed yet. But it'll be very soon. I'm almost done. There's only one more clip, Sandy. And then, of course, the bonus Sandy clip. But, yeah, I explained beforehand that they are basically attempting to normalize Trump by asking a foreign leader who's about to meet with him and has every reason to try to kiss up to him and, you know, diplomatically say nice things about the American president he's about to meet with, but he uses, you know, Fox News is using that to normalize Trump as a president in this long history of American presidents, and I thought that was kind of bogus and disingenuous, but I've spent most of this broadcast when I refer to this James Comey book, A Higher Loyalty here. Oh, Sandy's settling down and lying back down, and I'm going to show her lying down next to that James Comey book in just a second. But I titled this video Trump versus Comey, and I've been criticizing all these attacks on Comey, but this last clip is actually Chuck Todd talking to the most, or one of the most, or the most moderate Republican senator, Susan Collins of Maine, criticizing James Comey as the FBI director in terms that I actually cannot disagree with in any way. There are criticisms of James Comey that are definitely legitimate. The liar and leaker part, that I don't know about that, but these final criticisms of James Comey, if you think I can never agree with a Republican, I think I have to agree with Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, in this final 1 minute, 2 second clip of her talking to Chuck Todd about, this is actually not a confrontational question, it's kind of a softball question that she hits a home run, asking, Chuck Todd asks, you know, after James Comey's book tour this week, what advice would you give to future FBI directors? And I'll talk about her answer with you after we watch that final clip together before the bonus Sandy clip over here.
James Comey's book tour. What do you make of James Comey, and what do you make of the... what's the lesson now you're taking away from perhaps what advice you would give a future FBI director by watching James Comey and this book tour and how he's handled all of this?
Well, if I were advising a future FBI director, I would say two things. One, always follow the Department of Justice's protocols and guidelines, which unfortunately James Comey did not do in the Hillary Clinton investigation, and he did not do when he leaked documents that were FBI work documents to a friend of his, knowing that they would go to the press. And so that would be my first advice. The second would be, don't write a book in the middle of an investigation.
You think this is potentially disruptive to the Mueller probe?
That's what worries me. I cannot imagine why an FBI director would seek to essentially cash in on a book when the investigation is very much alive. He should have waited to do his memoir.
The Senate confirmation process.
And it's hard to disagree with any of Susan Collins' criticisms of James Comey. Like I said, I haven't actually, haven't actually read the James Comey book yet, but it actually, as someone who used to work in the criminal justice system as a criminal defense attorney, I can totally understand how releasing his memoir during the criminal investigation could, you know, like he talked about in his interviews and in the memos about his discussion with Reince Priebus, and that might affect the way Reince Priebus testifies, although I think he may have already testified. But basically, on the one hand, you don't want any witnesses talking to the press before the actual criminal trial, or that would be the impeachment and removal trial, or who knows how that's going to turn out. But I do think that James Comey decided, you know, I got fired, so I'm going to publish my book when I can make the most money. And it's not really about what's best for America, despite all the things he said in his interviews. It's really, at this point when he's publishing his book, not on this side, but over on this side, I knew it wasn't going to be the first side, which I do plan to read, but I don't think is much different from what you can, at least the Trump part isn't much different from what you can read in the memos that were released to the Republicans, or released to the Congress and then leaked by Republicans so they could claim James Comey as a leaker, whatever. Anyway, that was the final clip from LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. I hope you enjoyed the clips I picked out for you. I definitely appreciate the people who gave, the live viewers who gave me my super chat contributions. You can see, here's a couple I saw. Nelson 100 and Kinky, thank you very much for increasing my YouTube revenue, which has definitely been disappointing for just about a year now, since the YouTube adpocalypse, which took place in April 2017. It's April 2018, so that is a year. And I also really appreciate my Patreon contributors. The $5 level that gives you the opportunity to get one of these weatherproof vinyl stickers, hashtag LiberalViewer stickers. Or at the $10 level, you can actually get your own U.S. Constitution from one of these ACLU versions, pocket constitutions, that includes a Know Your Rights section at the end. So I appreciate those Patreon contributors, and every week I seem to get another direct PayPal contributor. There's a link down in the video description to PayPal.me/LiberalViewer. Is that what it is? Where you can give me a direct PayPal contribution. And for the $5 and $10 contributors, I will also send out stickers and constitutions to those people as well. And I also promised a bonus Sandy clip at the end. This is Sandy lying down next to, lying down next to the Higher Loyalty James Comey book, when it was down on the floor over there next to my Sandy's looking over, next to my American Constitutional Law book. Here's the bonus Sandy clip. Well, first, when I told her to lie down, I edited parts out, but it's still like 17 seconds together, all together over here. Lie down. Sandy, lie down. Okay, and that's the show for tonight. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for giving me a thumbs up. Thanks for your supportive comments. Thanks for the Super Chat contributors, the Patreon contributors, the PayPal contributors, everybody who helps me do this show for the last 5 years in 1 week. And I appreciate all of it, and I hope you appreciate the effort I put in. And I guess until next week, or until I have some reason to upload some other kind of video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.